are back live at 101.5 FM WLCB, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. My name is Bill Miksch. I'm president of W.D. May Financial Group in Grayslake, Illinois, where we serve the public around the country, 16 states around the country, and we protect your life, we protect your health, we preserve your wealth, and we can guarantee an income for the rest of your life, and I couldn't say it if it weren't true. But without further ado, the man, the legend, the way of life, the man who comes from the state bird, which is the cardinal, the man who comes from the state where the state tree is the buckeye, the man who comes from the state where the state flower is the carnation, and where the Cleveland Browns were named after their first coach, Paul Brown, in 1945. Sean Hauser.
Hey, Bill. Sounds like you've done your Ohio history research this week.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a nice little source when you're in a hurry.
That would have been fantastic when I was in fourth grade because they made everybody go through Ohio history, which was great. And you learned how to draw the state, and you learned how all the kind of things worked, and it was pretty cool. Got to admit.
Well, that's great. How are you, bud?
I'm doing well, sir. Doing well. I have a little too much March Madness. Watched way too much basketball, but other than that, I'm doing well.
How's your brackets?
Oh, blown. Totally shot.
Yeah. I don't think I seriously doubt that people had picked Duquesne and Oakland to win their first games, and that's where the brackets kind of got busted. But fast forward to now, it looks like the top tier teams are in it, and nobody below maybe a 7 is still in it, I think.
Yeah, I think I heard that the first and second seeds are all in, and then yeah, it was some pretty amazing games in there. And I remembered watching the first game for LSU on the men's side, and Charles Barkley was talking them up big time, and down like a rock.
Yep. Yeah, well, I will admit that I watched a fair amount of basketball, both men and women's games. My son, as you may know, Ryan, went to University of Iowa, so he happens to know Caitlin Clark when he was there doing production stuff, so he knows her. And it's been fun to watch the girls as much as it has been fun to watch the guys. I watched the North Carolina State game, and I forget, was it Oakland I think they played? And Oakland had every opportunity to win that game. They had so many opportunities to win, but when it came right down to it, they didn't have the horses. The other thing I noticed, too, that the center on North Carolina State is, I don't know how tall he is, but he's got to be 290. He's a hog in the paint. He just takes up everything, and he's a big dude. He's not like Shaq, where, when Shaq was coming up, he was big, but he was thin. This guy is, when he turns around, it's you-know-what for days, So.
Oh, no. Totally agree with that. And like you mentioned, the women's tournament, they played up to Caitlin Clark, and they talked about how, her last game on her home court and all that. So I tuned into that last night to watch that game. And watching some of the ladies, it used to be they were all, 100 pounds if they had, a couple rolls of nickel in each pocket. And there was some ladies that, my God, the athleticism and the ability to box out and that was a great game to watch some of those ladies play and to hear about their commitment, and they stayed 5-6 years to keep the team together.
Yep.
It was a great game.
There's a player on USC, University of Southern California, who evidently was shot 9 times, and I don't remember if it was recent or when she was a kid, but now she's playing at the highest level at USC after suffering that really brutal engagement that she had. So, yeah, you got it. it's a different level of athleticism than when you and I were going to school. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, we'll see what happens this week. Lots of brackets are going to get busted up again. Who do you have winning? I'll be honest, Sean. I didn't do the brackets. I just ran out of time. So I'm enjoying the game without having to feel like I've got skin in the game. But do you have a winner or the top? The teams going to the finals or Final Four?
Still have. I did 2 men's brackets, and I still have Houston in one and Creighton in another. And I don't think that one lasted, but. And then on the women's side, I picked Iowa to go all the way.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Well, that would be a fair. That would be for Iowa to go all the way. Would be a what's the word I'm looking for? A great ending to a great career for Caitlin Clark, especially given the fact that they lost to LSU last year in the finals.
Correct.
And there was a lot of bravado on the LSU side, doing the let me show you the ring on my finger kind of thing from that one chick, and so I mean I didn't appreciate that much. I get the whole look at me thing, but there's a certain level of you got to show a little bit of professionalism, and I doubt seriously if that lady ends up in the pros that they're going to allow her to get away with stuff like that. So we'll just have to see.
It was fun last night to watch Caitlin, and as she's, shooting these just long distance threes and all of that, and she's trying to get the crowd up and try to get them in the game. And there's a couple of times she let her emotions go, but you're like, did she really just say that? But whatever. You're in the game, the heat of battle.
Yep.
It was a good one.
Yep. So we'll see. Friday, I think the games start again Friday. Is that my recollection? Or Thursday? Do they start again Thursday? I don't
know.
Yep.
I know the Elite Eight for the men, I think, is on Saturday, but then so the Sweet 16 would have to be Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday, yeah.
And I think the women are going to their next games, so I think they're in the maybe Sweet 16 as well.
Yep, I think you're right.
So.
Well, we're going to get on with our topic. Last week, Sean, we talked about I had a couple of circumstances in our office where we were dealing with out-of-network doctors, and in one case there was a balanced billing thing going on where the provider had the hospital had actually provided a bill, a full accounting of the bill, including all of the so-called adjustments that the insurance companies would take, and invoiced my client for about $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
Now, curiously enough, on the bill, it says no insurance provided, right? Now, he's saying that I gave him the card. I don't know why they didn't submit it. After he got the invoice, he went ahead and submitted the claim himself. And the discounts a month later changed dramatically from a $1,500 net bill to a $3,400 net bill. And so we're involved in that particular discussion. And in this context, the hospital's in a position of knowledge of knowing whether or not there was insurance or no insurance, and then providing an invoice that the customer is going to depend upon. And I'm pretty sure he didn't see the footnote that said no insurance provided, even though it is kind of evident on the bill. He may not have recognized it, or if he did, he's like, well, maybe I'll get better discounts if I submit the claim. Well, that didn't happen. It went the other way. So our attitude with this is the hospital failed in their transparency rules. They're in a position of knowledge to communicate efficiently and effectively what the bill is supposed to be. They actually did provide a bill with showing the adjustments, which happened to be, curiously enough, better than if the insurance company had participated, which really blew me away, to be perfectly honest with you. And then we're also attacking it from the perspective of the No Surprise Act. And I'm going to get into what what the No Surprise Act is shortly insofar as this whole thing is concerned. So that's one particular issue. And then another issue that came about was, I think I mentioned to you, Shauna, there was a client of ours whose son was in a baseball game a week and a half or so ago and misjudged a fly ball in the outfield, and it got him good right on the face, fractured his nasal cavity and his orbital. I'm kind of familiar with that since our son Randy had an injury like that in a college soccer game where a kid had, during a game, dropped his head like a linebacker and drilled him on the right side from the blind side, Randy's blind side, never saw him coming. And full disclosure, I'm not even sure I told my wife this before, but I was playing baseball as a little kid in the backyard. We were playing running bases. And you know how the baseball gloves have little see-through things that you can see? You know, you can kind of peek through and see things. Well, I did that. And my partner across the way, we were throwing pretty hard ball. You know, we were playing with a baseball, and I put my hand up to goofing around, and I dropped the glove just as the ball was going to hit my glove if I left it there. If I left it there, it would have been okay. I dropped the glove just enough, and it plunked me on my right eye, and I almost lost my eye. I had a fractured orbital. My eye, the socket was huge. I didn't go to school for a couple days. My friend was mortified. He was so sorry. It was my fault in the big picture of things. I should have just left my glove up, or should have had, my eyes looking at the baseball rather than goofing around looking through the hole. But in this particular case, the kid fractured his face at the local hospital here, which is in network. The maxillofacial doctor who was on call was not in anybody's network. Nobody's network. Not Blue Cross, not Aetna, nobody's network. Out of network completely. And so how do you deal with something like that? So we're going to address how do you deal with this. And it's messy. It can get ugly. Arguably, it's not fair. I'm just going to put this out there. I'm going to say a couple things. And I may anger some of my medical providers. We're all big boys. Put your big boy pants on, one leg at a time, and let's figure this out together. Because at some point, the shoe's going to be on your other foot, and you're going to be the one complaining that a non-network doctor showed up at your bedside and he wants $15,000, or otherwise he's not going to treat you. So these hospitals that are buying up doctors all over the place also do what are called admitting privileges at their hospitals. So, let's say, Sean, that you're a medical provider and I'm the hospital. I'm going to vet your background, your education. I'm going to interview you and the people that you mentored with while you were coming up the food chain to determine whether or not your skills are qualified to work in my hospital. So that's the vetting process, and it's a pretty significant process. There's no two ways about it. Once the vetting is done, the hospital is, in my opinion, and if I'm wrong, folks, I want some hospital muckety-muck to tell me, or some insurance company muckety-muck to tell me, because I don't understand this. And this is 33 years of I don't understand this. If the hospital has the ability to vet you as a physician, and you're qualified to work there, the next step should be, Sean, congratulations, you're welcome aboard to my hospital. Before we sign, whatever the privileges, agreements are, I've got a bunch of these HMO and PPO contracts that I want you to sign as well, so that you can practice medicine without worrying about the business end of things. If the hospitals did that, we wouldn't have this discussion that we're going to have tonight. But they don't. And at the end of the day, a lot of doctors, still to this day, when they graduate, recite the Hippocratic Oath. I've done some research on this too, Sean. This actually started in the 17th century. That's where it came from. Now, I'm sure when they created the Hippocratic Oath in the 17th century, they did not envision MRIs, CAT scans, and robots doing surgery. So I'm sure of that. But essentially, the Hippocratic Oath says it was historically taken by physicians to provide care and treatment, to keep patient information confidential, and pass knowledge to the next generation. The 17th century origin, they said to practice two things. If you're dealing with disease, either help or do not harm the patient, ergo, do no harm. That's where the do no harm comes in. Now, fast forward to the 1970s. Curiously enough, I didn't know this until I did the research, folks, but the Supreme Court said that the Hippocratic Oath is archaic and is no longer relevant to the medical community, per se. Now, I will grant you that the 17th century, fast forward to the 21st century, you're talking about apples and bananas. There's no comparison. But the do no harm thing, I think, can be extrapolated, especially in the days in which we're paying premiums at $500 a month for a single person and $2,500 a month for a family, with $3,000 deductibles and $9,000 out of pockets. And the do no harm thing can be at least somewhat alleviated if the hospitals would just step up and say, you want to work here, Sean, you're going to have to sign these contracts. Now, you might say, Bill, that's not fair. You're, I deserve more than 20 cents on the dollar or 40 cents on the dollar. I'm not quibbling with that. I don't doubt that you believe that. However, the customers that walk in here think you're employed here. You're an employee of my hospital, and I'm in the network. Now, you don't wear a coat or a badge that says I'm an independent contractor, or I'm a 1099. I'm not an employee. You don't wear any kind of recognition of name tags or color-coded coats or whatever that talk about the fact that you're not an employee of the hospital. Who are the employees? The nurses, the techs, the staff, the people that probably work in the laboratories, short of the pathologist who is running the operation, the x-ray techs, not the radiologists. There's circumstances where the radiologists are not going to be a part of the hospital staff, even though the radiology unit is inside the hospital. And I have a story about that I may tell if there's time later. Certainly the ER doctors, while they're running around to different triage situations and they're highly skilled, the reality is a lot of those guys are hired contractors by the hospital to work in those emergency rooms, and those doctors are maybe on rotation between different hospital systems or ER and urgent care systems. So you've got radiologists. Let me start it this way. You've got pathologists, emergency room doctors, radiologists, and the doctors that put you to sleep are the anesthesiologists. So you got the pair doctors. The only time you see your anesthesiologist, arguably, is when he or she says, "Good night, Sean. We'll see you in the morning." Or we'll see you after the procedure. That's the relationship you have with that physician. It's highly unlikely you have a relationship with your radiologist. They're in a dark room. And it's highly unlikely you have a pathologist relationship. They're in a lab. And while there is a possibility you could have a relationship with a couple of ER doctors, like in my family, you had 5 of us playing soccer at any one time, and we did get to know, sadly, a couple of the ER doctors by name, and they recognized us too, and that's never a good thing. But short of that, none of these doctors, I shouldn't say none, a lot of these doctors are not employees of the hospital. So the do no harm thing comes into play where there is no announcement that these physicians are out of network. And the patients can be run over by these medical bills, whether it's a true emergency or not, because they're using the emergency room, or they're using the x-ray department because that's where they were told to go, to the hospital x-ray department, or go to the lab at the hospital. That's where they were told to go. Most patients don't do a lot of homework in saying, well, I can go to that outpatient x-ray place over there, or I can go to the Quest or LabCorp labs over at Walmart, for example, and get my blood drawn, etc. Or I can have my provider do it if I have an orthopedic doctor where I've got a relationship. They've got an x-ray. They may not have an MRI or a CAT scan. The hospitals will have those. So the long and short of it, though, is that these physicians and a lot of other ologists are not in the network. They're paid contractors who have privileges at this hospital. And we're running into this more and more. So in January 2022, Sean, there was a law passed called the No Surprise Act. And essentially the No Surprise Act says, in the event of an emergency, and this is strictly emergency kind of thing, because that's when you don't really have time to plan or shop around or whatever. In the event of an emergency, if you go to an in-network hospital, that entire bill is treated as an in-network service by the providers, irrespective if they're in or out of network. And the insurance company has to pay as if those doctors were in-network. Now, I will be honest with you, I don't know the business end of that. I don't know if the radiologist or the pathologist or the ER doctor gets their shorts in a knot and has their staff call in the insurance company to say, hey, you only gave me 40 cents on the dollar. I want 70% on the dollar to make me feel better. But here's the other side of this on the No Surprise Act. The patient, theoretically, cannot be balance billed in an emergency situation. That's against the law. They cannot be balance billed for anything beyond the in-network deductible and copays and out-of-pocket cost. If they are, there is the ability to dispute it. Where we run into problems, Sean, is that, sadly, as much as people like me try to educate our employees and the employer's staff about what to do and what not to do, as an example, I will always say, before you pay the bill, make sure you match up the statement of benefits from your carrier with the billing statement that you received from the medical provider. If everything lines up, you're good to go. Pay the claim. If you're not, then either get somebody like me involved or call the insurance company to say, hey, I think there's a problem here. Can you help me? Have you run into this at all, Sean, in your vast experience of dealing with the medical community?
Never in an emergency situation, but I have gotten some bills where I'm getting billed from everybody, and I'm not quite sure what part they had to play when they came in, what services they provided, so it's taken some research.
Yep. So when that has happened, did you have to find out where that doctor, who the doctor was? What was he in the network? Did you just make a phone call? Or what did you do?
Yeah, I used my insurance plan's website because they received all the claims from all the doctors, and then they notified me whether they were in network, out of network, what was covered, what wasn't covered, what my end was, what their end was. The only person I remember is I saw an ER doctor, and then I had a couple of tests done. Then they sent me upstairs, or they sent me into a procedure, and the urologist did that. And then that was really the only people I remember. But then I got bills for probably some testing or some radiology providers and things. And it was kind of like I had to figure out, because they're like, which doctor did you see? And I'm like, well, I think her name was this. Well, then there was a shift change, and there was another bill, and I was like, well, they didn't. It wasn't another doctor from another agency or another practice. And so it was like trying to keep everything straight for me.
Did you ever get a sense that you weren't sure if a particular service was actually done for you, that it was just put on the bill and it was assumed you were going to just look right past it?
Well, yeah. I mean, because I had kidney stones, right? So I go to the hospital, and I'm in ER. I get seen by an ER doctor, which they were not hospital employees. They were a practice that the hospital used in the ER, so I got a bill for them. And then I got billed for some tests, whatever they call them, MRIs and those kind of things. So I got a bill from that practice. And then I got a bill from another doctor who was a urology doctor, but he was not the person who did the surgery or the procedure. So I got a bill from his practice and a bill from that doctor that did the procedure. And, of course, I got hospital bills for overnight stay and all that junk. But then when I went back, and I got billed from an anesthetist, too. So, yeah, it was kind of hard trying to figure out. It's like, wow, I got 10 different bills coming in. You kind of go in there thinking, okay, I go into this hospital, I come out of the hospital, they give me a big bill that everybody's included. But no, I had to sort that all through just so I could make sense of it, because I didn't know if, like you said, I didn't know if they provided me service or not, or service they provided.
Sean, you just said something was interesting. You went into the hospital thinking it was all going to be one nicely packaged bill, and it turned out to be that you were getting bills from every which way, every which corner that you could see, and you weren't sure if some were legit, some weren't. You don't remember this doctor or that doctor, where'd this come from, where'd that come from. And at some point your eyes start to, twirl like a cartoon character, and as long as I don't have to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket or something doesn't look weird, I'm just going to pay the bill because I'm exhausted looking at this. And that's totally expected from the general public. I totally understand that. For me, I look at these things all the time, so I'm going to critically look at them. But for the average person, I've got a client right now. He reached out to me last week. He's probably got 2 inches of bills that he's overwhelmed by for something that his wife is going through right now, and he doesn't know what's up and what's down. And it'll probably take me maybe a couple of hours to fish through it all. But I know what I'm doing. The average person, that they're just completely overwhelmed by the whole thing. And what makes it worse is the medical bills are oftentimes balanced due statements, so you don't even get a full picture of what was done unless you ask for it. We're coming up to break, and I said, how are you going to deal with this? So in the next top of the hour, Sean, we're going to talk about how, what's the process when you're dealing with a non-network provider, and what are some of the options that you can use to ward off, or at least not maybe stop, but get control of your own checkbook, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, is controlling your money flow. With that in mind, that's Sean Hauser. My name is Bill Miksch. This is 101.5 FM, WLCB, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. We'll be right back after these short messages.